Come check out the Connection Games and Comics. We have the largest selection of War Machine and Hordes miniatures in the Lower Mainland. War Machine Wednesdays and Sundays, with tables and terrain to play your game.
Okay, welcome back to Wargamers Shut and Paint, where we are going to paint a Winter Guard model. Now, as described in our previous paint videos, we are going to use just our base paint set for our beginning painting tutorials. I'm going to show you how to get these models painted to a reasonable tabletop standard using what we got. We've got a dollar store paintbrush, we've got our model, a paper Dixie cup, our war paints, as described in our war paint unboxing video, a sheet of plastic, which we're going to use as a palette, some paper towel, and that's basically it. Now, I was considering what I wanted to do for the cloth. One of the big things that you're going to need to keep in mind when you're going to paint any of these models is that you want to consider what the largest surface area is on your model. So a lot of people think, okay, well, Khador, that's got to be red, right? If we're going to do the default colors, which in this video, or in this video series, we will be doing. But it's not for infantry. The largest amount of surface area is covered by cloth on the infantry. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint the cloth first, and then we're going to move on to some of the smaller parts. I like to work within the largest parts first, and then work our way into the smaller details. And I also like to make sure that the hardest to reach spots are taken care of first. So with that in mind, we're going to work on our cloth. I think what I want to do for this cloth is I want to have kind of a bluish gray. So we're going to try something here. We're going to try and mix our blue color. We're going to go 2 drops of blue. We're going to try, and I want it to be kind of a pastel. So we're going to go 2 drops of blue. We're going to go 1 drop of black. And we're going to go 1 drop of white. So the black is going to darken everything. The white should desaturate everything. And our primary color is going to be our blue. So let's see how this goes. We're going to mix this all up and see how it looks, and see if that's a color we're happy with. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to mix in a fair amount of water, around a 1-to-1 mix. And yeah, that is actually the color I'm kind of going for here. I wanted kind of a grayish blue, and that's what I got. When you're painting a model, you want to make sure that you're painting with thin layers. So the thinner the layers, the better. I realize that yes, that means you're going to have to do multiple coats sometimes, but that's okay. And with this layer, because we are working on the largest surface area, we don't have to be all that careful necessarily. It's also our first color, so we can always cover up any areas we've slopped on at a later time. And we are just going for tabletop quality. We are not professional painters. I'm not a professional painter anyway. I do like to have a reasonable quality tabletop standard. And that's what we're going to kind of shoot for. We're going to try and get everybody on board with, a model we're going to be happy to play with is the thing. Now, this doesn't have to take a long time necessarily, but the more time you spend, the better off your results are going to be. Just like anything else, really. It's going to be that fine balancing act of ensuring that you can see it as well as me. I probably don't have the camera in the most ideal place for this, but as this is our first one, we're going to see how this works, and we'll go from there. If we need to adjust or fix this in later videos, we will. So right now, I'm just painting underneath his cloak or skirt, as it were. You can probably make out that it's not a full layer of paint. You can see black through the layer, and that's okay. That means that our paint's probably thin enough. Now, I would encourage you to write down any paint mixes that you do. Personally, what I do is I write down every color that I use for all of the model and all of the different parts within that model. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of work, but there's been plenty of times where I've sat back and gone, well, geez, I wish I knew what color I used there, and I can't remember. So if you paint a whole lot of models, eventually you get to that point where you're just like, I honestly have no idea what colors I used. I wish I remembered, but I don't. And that writing everything down will save you that trouble. With the Khador models, for a couple of reasons. One, because I think we can get reasonable tabletop quality results. and 2, because I am on kind of a time crunch. I've got the Scorn models to paint here pretty quick too, and I still have the whole Cato army to do. We are going to do the army painting dip method. We're going to see how that works out for us. I have used the dip a little bit in the past, and it gives pretty good results for tabletop. It's not going to win you competitions, but that's fine, especially when you're starting out, actually. I guess the only one thing I would caution with the army painter dips is that you don't want to use it exclusively for everything. And the reason why that is because then you'll stop challenging yourself. You'll stop learning, you'll stop progressing as a painter, and Rome wasn't built in a day. So anytime that you've put towards learning how to be a better painter is time well spent, assuming that's what your goal is. But now conversely, if you're more of a gamer than a painter, by all means, army paint the hell out of everything. You will get a reasonable quality product. You'll be happy. Your stuff will be painted. Your opponents may not have stuff painted, but at least you'll have an army that you can look at and you'll be happy that you have. We spent a lot of money on these, or we spend a lot of money on these models. We spend a lot of time trying to have something that we're happy with. And, just having that sea of bare metal and plastic is fine if that's what you're happy with, but I have a feeling very few people got into these games by looking on the box and seeing the fully painted miniatures and going, you know what, I'd like to have a totally bare metal / plastic version of that. I don't think very many people have done that. No, I'm sure maybe some have, but there's a reason why we paint these models, and it's not because we're all super excellent painters. It's because it enhances the game. It makes it a little more cinematic, a little more realistic. When you're army painting something, using the army painter inks, as it were, so here's our strong tone, which is what we'll be using. The important thing is you want to have a nice base coat. The cleaner your base coat is, the better the strong tone can do its magic. It'll shade everything for us. The raised areas will pop, and we'll be happy with the end result, more or less. If we have a really shoddy base layer, it will still clean up some of that. It will hide some of our mistakes, but it's not going to give us quite what we expected. At this point, I'm kind of taking a look at the model going, okay, well, where do I want my next color to be? Or what do I want my next color to be? Would it be easier painting the shoulder pads? I think painting red on our plates inside of here might be the easiest part next. So let's carry on to our red. And one thing about red in general is that it is it's a thin color, the same thing with yellow. So if you want a bright red, you're going to have to paint it on a few times, and that's just the nature of the paint. It's got kind of a lower pigment count. You want to be careful when you're thinning your red because of that. The coverage on this isn't going to be great so far, and we are going to definitely need to do at least 1 or 2 more layers on that. I think I wanted this plate. There's a little plate there. There's a little bit of a metal plate on his chest, I feel, so I'm going to do that one as well. Now you could argue that's not actually a metal plate and that it's just part of his tunic, but that's one of the nice things about being able to painting your models is that you really get to choose, all aspects of how you want this thing to turn out. Is it metal? Is it cloth? Is it plastic? Is it carbon fiber? That's entirely up to you. And into his other shoulder here. Trying to stay in frame here, so. Now, it's important that if you have a thinner coat, that you wait a bit more time between multiple layers. Because if you have a half dry layer and you start painting over it, what'll happen is you'll grab those little dry bits of paint and you'll just take them with you, and you'll end up with this really gross kind of scuffed up model that you're not going to be very happy with. Also, if you're army painting stuff using the Army Painter method, you probably want to go a step brighter than you think you want. Because the Army Painter does definitely darken everything. So if you want bright, vibrant colors, not only do you want to make sure that you're using probably the not even the strong tone, probably whatever the base tone is, but you also want to make sure that you're probably a step or two brighter with your color selection than you end up wanting in the end. He's got a couple little pouches on his side and in front of him, as well as a little holster for what's probably a handgun. Let's go over those with our brown. The one thing I do want to say about the Army Painter paints is that they do come up very thick, so you do want to make sure that you are thinning them down at least a little bit. So here we are, we're going to paint the little pouches, as well as the rest of that strap. I'm just using the brown right out of the pot, thinned down a little bit with water. I'm not mixing this color at all, because I feel like that's okay. One thing you could do is you could mix black into that, or you could mix, I suppose you can mix white into it. I'm not entirely sold on mixing white into it, but you can mix other colors into it, and instead of just painting all of the patches the one color, you can paint them different colors. I'm not going to bother. I'm going to paint them all the one color. And some people can cringe at that. That's okay. Because I am on a deadline. Ultimately, we want to get these painted so that we can get battle reports to you, and you can be happy watching those. Seeing me crush Mike or Logan. It's not actually true. I actually lose a lot to Logan, considering his inexperience. I believe that's usually because he plays Khador, and Khador is a lot more powerful than he lets on. I tend to underestimate them until something bad happens. And again, this is going to take more than one coat, but we knew that. I'm going to do all of his straps with this brown as well. Again, you could have more variation in the leather, but I think this guy's going to end up looking pretty good for what we've been doing. One kind of sneaky trick I like to do is I like to give all my models a bit more of a decorative base, a bit nicer base than most people do. And I like to do that because when you do that, if your paint job is kind of an okay or average paint job, and you have a really nice base, people tend to look more at the model holistically. So they look at it and go, wow, that's a really nice model you got there. When really it's an average paint job. It's okay. It's nothing I'm super proud of, but the model has a bit more gravitas. Paint his little gloves here. The basing video will be up soon. I've been promising people that one for a little while now, and I feel bad that I haven't got it out yet, but we've been just doing so much other content that it hasn't been possible. I haven't had enough hours. But that's okay. And I am just painting the whole boot one solid brown color. It could be, you could do it another way. You could paint, multi-tone boots if you really wanted. I want his, the little fur thing around his neck to be kind of a light gray color. But like an actual light gray, not like a bluish gray. So we're going to try that out. So I got 2 drops of white to 1 drop of black for this gray color. It's actually probably a little... Oh, okay, there we go. I was going to say it's a little darker than I want it to be, but I was wrong. It's about the right color. Okay, so let's just paint that up. The hope is that this gray won't be confused with the blue. Okay, so that looks visibly different than the rest of the model. It is pretty close, so it's not, I don't know, I think I might have preferred a different color, but that's okay for what we got. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the axe head a little bit gray. Well, a lot gray. Just to kind of prep it for our metallic layer. Because I want the metal to be a little bit brighter, again, because the strong tone's going to dull that a fair amount. So this is my way of kind of compensating for that. And we'll do the same on the gun. On the gun, I want this to be a little bit more unique. I want the top part to be silver, or more of like a bolt gun, and I want the bottom part to be a brass, because I feel like mixing the two together, especially with the army painter thing, makes it look pretty nice. So that's what we're going to do. Just going to put some gray on where we want the silver bits to go. And I really feel like doing two tones rather than just the one tone, like making it all gray or making it all silver or all brass, is going to make the model look better overall. This strap should have been painted brown. We're going to have to make another little bit of that gray because I screwed up and I didn't put it on his hat, and I really feel like I want that there. I think maybe what we'll do is we'll probably change that the little bit of fur to maybe like a white, because with the blue on top and the blue below, I think it might get lost as a detail. And it is a detail that you kind of want to stick out. And I think what we'll do in addition to making that that part white, after we paint his face, we'll probably also give him a little white mustache. Because again, it's another detail that after the dip we could probably see. And I call it the dip. What I mean is the ink wash. I think first I want to paint on his skin tone. So we are just going to use the barbarian flesh that came with the kit that we picked up. So his face is going to need a couple of coats. It looks kind of muddy and dirty right now. For those of you that are wondering what color this is going to be, it's going to basically be 1 part black to 4 parts brown. And we're going to put that on the wooden bits. And trying very hard not to kind of slop on other areas of the model, because if I can avoid it, it'll save me, the time that I'd have to take repainting that part. Again, for army painting stuff, you really want to try and be as in the lines as you can. There's not a whole lot of wood on this guy. Yeah, so we're going to do another bit of red. So we're still not quite where I want to be with his shoulder pads. And I know this is probably a fairly slow video, but the first one I really wanted to be kind of in real time, so you guys get a real idea as to what I'm doing here. The rest of them aren't going to be, they're going to be sped up probably 2 or 3 times, because it's not going to be as critical. This is really just the introductory paint video. How do we do this and get, okay results? And one thing I wanted to clarify, actually, because I don't think I mentioned it, but when we say we're going for tabletop quality, what I mean is we want somebody to look at our army from about waist height and think that that's pretty badass. If somebody picks up the models and starts scrutinizing every little detail, it's not going to hold up. It's not going to look like the best pro in the universe painted it, but that's not the quality level we're going for. We're going for, I got a painted army, what do you got? That being said, this army will look better than a lot of other armies, I feel, once we finish the basing and once we've painted the whole thing, because there are a lot of people that don't have painted models, and it's unfortunate because I really feel like it adds so much to the hobby, the hobby in the game. But that's the reality of the situation, is that just not that many people fully paint their armies. And I'm not talking like, okay, we added a new unit and I want to try it out before before I got around to painting it. I'm talking like seas of gray and metal models. There you go. So his face looks kind of blobby, and that's because there's no real definition, because there's no shadows and there's no highlights. But he has a face color now. And yes, we're going to go back over that neck bit there. I don't want to use too much black. It'd be easy to screw up. So we're going to just use a little tiny bit of black. We're going to mix in just a little tiny bit of that black with our white. Now, I guess we could just use white because a lot of this isn't going to show up after the, like the difference is probably not going to be that significant after the dip, but I kind of wanted to do it this way. And all of it's judgment, right? Any colors you want to use them. Anything you want to try it. It's how you get better. There we go. Now it's a lot more apparent that that's a different part of the model. That's really all what we're trying to do. We're trying to really make it look like each little bit is a different component of the model. So here's the brush that came with the set. We're going to take that, and you'll notice it has an incredibly fine tip, which would have made all of our previous steps take forever. We're going to take a little bit of our white. We're not going to bother with the eyes, but we are going to get his little mustache. So maybe he doesn't have a mustache. Oh no, I think he does. Now you could attempt to dot his eyes, and that would actually add something to your model, but I think the dip is going to obscure a lot of that, so I probably wouldn't bother. And by that I mean I'm not going to bother, so I don't want to tell you to do it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to paint the Khador emblem on his hat and shoulder, as well as the parts that we want to be bronze. We're going to paint those the dark brown color here. And use our little tiny brush here, because I think it'll make this part a little bit easier. Although you don't have to use this, you could use the big brush. But this will give us a little more control, I think. We do kind of want to be careful with this part because this is something that legitimately adds to the model. That's a little trickier because I feel like the sculpt could be more helpful. But it's okay. And then on his gun, of course. Actually, on his little shoulders here, we're going to do this part in bronze. So we want to make sure that that's brown to start off with. And the reason why we're putting the brown on first is because we're trying to make a foundation layer for our brass or our bronze, as it'll make painting those, it'll make it a lot easier because your brass or your gold is a little bit translucent, I find. And so taking the steps means that even if it is a bit translucent, it's not too hard to get a nice cover or a nice coat. Otherwise, you could be doing 5, 6, 7, 8 coats, and it's terrible. See, I always do brown before gold. It doesn't really matter which brown you use, but I always use, brown before gold or bronze. And we want his gun. I guess we could have just done this in the wood step, but I wasn't organized enough. What I'm hoping to accomplish with this is I want you guys to look at it and go, you know what, I could do that. How does this guy think he is? Because my answer to that would be, you're right, you can do that. And you damn well should be doing it. Why the hell are you guys plastic and metal? Be like, oh, well, I don't have the time. I'm like, no, but you got a shitload of excuses. That's what I would say. I think there's, you could do a whole video just on the motivation to paint. And I think that it is hard sometimes to get motivation to sit down and do it. But I think a lot of people come up with a lot of excuses. I don't have the right stuff or equipment or, just to not get it done. And it's like, it's not that they mind painting necessarily. It's they mind sitting down to paint. And I think that I've struggled with that in the past. But ultimately what I end up doing is just going, okay, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to sit down, I'm going to do it, and that's that. And when you take that stance, what you end up doing is getting shit painted. I thought about getting somebody else to paint my stuff for me, and there's a legitimate reason why you would do commission painting. Like, some people just really no interest in painting, they don't like it, It's not their thing, and that's fine. But to me, I like having that sense of pride, I guess, where when somebody comes by and looks at my army and goes, wow, that's pretty cool, I can know that that was something that I did. Even if it's you know, not that fantastic, even if I know where all of the problems are, and I do, at least to me, I can look at it and go, you know what? Okay, I know where all the problems are, but they don't. And they think it looks cool, and I can kind of be, I don't know, show some pride in that. So I'm going to mix a little bit of this brown with my gold here. I just want to darken it a little bit. And it being a little bit more gold than bronze is okay, because again, our future step, we will be kind of ruining that. So, and now we're just going to go back over the places where we want the bronze. This is pretty bright, actually. It's okay. This video is not going to be in the same style as a lot of paint videos where they professionally tell you, okay, do this, do this, do this, okay, you're done. A little less professional, I guess. I kind of like explaining my thought process, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. Because again, my goal is to teach people who are new. My goal is not to teach somebody who already knows how to paint well. Because that guy probably paints better than me anyway. I have some stuff that I'm very proud of, but even so, I'm not going to win any competitions. Okay, so we get that kind of nice gold on the Khador emblem, and you'll notice that that really pops. Like it really, really does. You can see that from the tabletop. You know what it is. That's the point. I'm going to just try and get his little hat Khador emblem. Very careful with this part because there's not a lot of sculpted material there. That looks okay. And then we'll move on to his gun here. This shoulder pad here, of course, which I almost forgot about. That would have been terrible. I really like the red and brass or gold. I feel like first off, red and gold together are kind of regal. And secondly, they really pop. Like most of this model is kind of mundane and drab, but the parts that really exemplify the Khadorianness really pop out, and you know for sure that it's a Khador model. One thing I like to do is I like to have a little ring around the top of the gun of this brassy bronze color. And the reason why that is because against the silver that we'll have next to it, it will really shine. And it's those little details that if you do them, the army painter method won't take away from the paint job, actually. A whole lot, anyway. Like, you'll end up with a really impressive looking model because you paid attention to some of the little details. Like, you don't, like I said, I mean, I'm not doing the little straps everywhere. I'm not doing anything on the bottom of his body, but the parts that really stand out make the model. So I'm kind of being lazy. I'm kind of cheating on some of it, but because I've done my due diligence, I guess, in some of the other areas, it really shows. So now we're going to take our plate mail metal, and we're going to put some on our palette. And normally I would darken this a bit with actually no, I think I will darken it a little bit with black. Where did our black go? Oh, here we are. Yeah, there we go. But I'm not going to just put 1-to-1 because I think that that's probably too much. So I'm going to take a little bit of our black, mix it into our silver. There we go. I don't want a whole lot of the black because it will really darken this real quick, as you saw in the color wheel, or in the color mixing tutorial, I guess. But we do want it still a little bit brighter than we want it to end up, because again, the quick shade is going to darken the hell out of everything. I realize you can't see all of the angles because I'm twisting and turning this guy all over the place, but I'm just painting the head of his axe right now. And if you're painting along at home, you'll know that some of the angles are fairly steep. I'm going to do the bottom of his axe too. And then we're going to do the top of his gun, of course. If you're new to painting, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and that's perfectly okay. The thing is every time you screw up, next time just screw up slightly less. You know, learn from it. If you didn't think you did enough coats in one spot, next time do more coats. Okay. So his gun looks a little like faux. It looks a little fake, a little gaudy even. I did the metallics last because you really don't want to start doing regular paint colors out of the same paint cup, and I didn't want to have to go switch it in the middle of it. And that's him so far. So at this point, we're going to let him dry a little bit, and then we're going to apply our strong tone. We'll let that dry, and we'll see how he turned out. We're going to take a one of our other dollar store brushes. I think we're going to use this one because I think it'll apply it nicely, and I think this one would make for a good dry brush. So we'll leave this one aside, and we'll use this guy. I'm not doing anything with the base here. I'm building the base separately, and there will be a tutorial on the bases themselves. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to just do it this way. And as you can see, it's very thick. The stuff is very thick. And we're just going to kind of slop it on. And we want to put a liberal amount of it on. We want to put it basically everywhere in the model. And the idea is that it will flow into the recesses of our model, do all of our shading for us, and also kind of darken the whole model. And in my experiences, it lives up to its claims. It does do exactly that, and it does it to a reasonable degree. It is kind of like a dark sepia color, so that's kind of like a brown. So be aware that, you know, it's going to make your model look darker. You know, the colors that we were working with aren't the colors that you're going to end up with. And that's the difference, I think a major difference between pro painting and, or rather competition painting. Aside from techniques, I'll rephrase that. That's one of the big differences between competition level painting and just tabletop painting, is that really for tabletop we are really just trying to get a reasonably good looking model from tabletop's distance, right? Nobody should be picking them up and scrutinizing them heavily, because that's really not the standard we're going for. So you just want to make sure that it's in all of the recesses. And then you'll start seeing that it starts pooling up, and you really want to whisk that away wherever it is pooling up. In the cloak it's not so bad because it will do a pretty good job of texturing his jacket, I guess. We'll just call it his jacket. As this stuff starts to kind of pool in the recesses, it'll slide down the model a little bit, and it can pool in places that you don't want it to. So you really want to remove it from those places. Like one of the places I want to be careful about is his eyes, because although we didn't do anything with his eyes, we still want them, you know, to exist. That's basically it. So we've Covered him up. I think he's looking pretty good. And then the final step on this is really just to spray it with a matte coat after or before basing. It doesn't really matter. But thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. I really do want to hear more feedback because it's the one thing that keeps us going, right? I mean, it's the one way that we know that people are watching our stuff and that they give a crap. It also kind of helps us shape the direction of the channel. Like, what do you guys want to see? Where do we want to take this? What, you know, it's one thing to do it for ourselves where we're interested in this kind of stuff. So let's do that. But, you know, if you don't have anybody to share it with, it's not as ideal. So, yeah, catch you next time.